Welcome to the Higher Love with Megan podcast with me, your host, Megan Cooper, a trauma-informed therapist, life coach and disruptor of wellness norms based in Brighton, UK. This isn't another nice-to-have wellness podcast. Instead, this podcast seeks to redefine what it means to be well in today's world. Here, we challenge the status quo, seek to reunite wellness with social justice and improve accessibility, diversity and inclusivity within wellness and beyond. As a listener, you are not here to passively consume. Instead, you are an ambassador for real, embodied, societal and systemic change in the world. As your host, I stand for radical self-inquiry and being able to have those confronting but necessary conversations so that we can remember our collective humanity at this time. We're here for the revolution and you've got a front row seat. Welcome back, listeners. It's been a hot second, hasn't it? Hot since literally it has been unprecedentedly hot in the UK and across Europe. More on that another time. But if you're a regular listener, you'll have noticed that I've taken a momentary pause to exhale and regather before hitting the ground running once more to bring forward more conversations with brilliant guests in the wild times through which we're living. How better to arrive back than bring you the conversation that I had the pleasure and honour of hosting in person back in May at Palestine House, organised by the Galilee Foundation as part of a week-long series of events to commemorate the anniversary of the Nakba. This conversation was between the celebrated voices of solidarity, Holocaust survivor Stephen Kapos and Palestinian Nakba survivor Antoine Raffoul. You may have listened to my previous individual episodes with them both, alongside their daughters, Andrea Kapos and Yasmin Say. Before the talk itself, we were treated to the first ever screening of the teaser to Survivors, a documentary about the lives and experiences of Stephen and Antoine, brought together by award-winning filmmakers of Think, Make, Create, Jackie Beaumont and Stephen's daughter, Andrea Kapos. Jackie and Andrea briefly introduced and shared a few words about this upcoming film. I look forward to hosting them on the podcast soon to discuss the film in more detail. In the meantime, I encourage you to head to YouTube to watch the teaser. Side note, I suggest bringing tissues. It is an unbelievably powerful and moving watch. And also, please consider donating, big or small, to their crowdfunder to continue the creation of this essential film, bringing these first-hand eyewitness accounts to life. The links to both the teaser and the crowdfunder are in the show notes. And a huge thank you to the Galilee Foundation for asking me to moderate this special event and for giving me permission to share this conversation. For those of you listening, please check out their important work helping Palestinian youth and consider making a one-off or regular donation. Links again in the show notes. For now, I hope that you enjoy this conversation as much as I did.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming. I'm Maha Al-Farra, the Managing Director of the Galilee Foundation, and we're an educational charity which supports disadvantaged Palestinian youth. Thank you for joining us for this Voices of the Nakba series. This is an important event because it's been 78 years since the catastrophe, 78 years since hundreds of thousands of Palestinians were expelled from their homes, and it's still happening today. Your being here matters and our voices matter because remembering, listening, and speaking out are acts of resistance and justice. We're honored to welcome Antoine Raffoul and Stephen Kapos in conversation moderated by Megan Cooper. And this is the first time that Antoine and Stephen will be on stage together. Please welcome all of our guests.
Firstly, thank you all so much for being here. What an amazing event to share together. It's a huge honor and privilege to be sat here tonight with these two remarkable humans, child survivors of catastrophe, eyewitness storytellers, architects, campaigners, advocates, fathers, and grandfathers. In commemoration of the Nakba, tonight is an opportunity to elaborate on your shared experiences of survival and hope. We'll start with Antoine. As the trailer describes, divided by hope, united in a fight for humanity, two survivors, one call for peace, inspired together. How is it for you to share this moment in history alongside Stephen?
Thank you very much. Thank you for all of you for coming and joining us here in this event, which I hope is the beginning of a trip to Cannes. We're going to have a winner here. Meeting this man is unique. I didn't expect to meet him because he is a Holocaust survivor. I thought that event was settled. It's a memory. And that wonderful, powerful event created the framework for peace and for memory preservation for the future. Then the Nakba came. It kept going on. It's not a memory, it's a progressive genocide. And I thought, who's going to help us? Suddenly I see a man over the horizon with a walking cane coming out of the blue, a Jew. Not that it is important, he's a Jew, he's a human, and he joins in this struggle. He comes from the core of the tragedy that created international laws to help the people of Gaza in their present genocide. And that's what I really value with him, and that I feel we're stuck together now.
I hope so. So this is a question to both of you, but Stephen, I will come to you first. Having both shared your childhood stories of enduring catastrophe, where or how do you see yourselves reflected in each other's stories?
So before I start, I'd like to just thank Andrea and Jackie again for the wonderful work they have done. And they showed it to me how hard it is to make a film at all, which I didn't realize before. And I'd like to start with also saying that we were both, Antoine and I, 7 years old at the time of our respective traumas. My advice to anybody who has to go through something like that is to be no older than 7 years old, because that way you don't quite appreciate, the dangers. And I can't remember being afraid at all during these really awful times. Only in retrospect did I realize what dangers we were in at several times. So with regard to the similarities of trauma, I think that, again, the fact that we were both 7 years old at the time of our experiences links us even more, because it's even easier to have empathy towards each other through that. Plus the fact, when we first met, it was during a demo we embraced, and I said to Antoine that we have something in common, that you survived the Nakba, I survived the Holocaust, and we both survived architecture. We have that as another link between us, because we appreciate what it was like, another trauma, but also something very keenly experienced and enjoyed. And we have that link through architecture and art. And we have been recently to fine spot of architecture, which Antoine introduced me to. And this will continue, I'm sure, in the future. So as he said, I think we are probably indivisible for a period ahead.
Thank you so much. And Antoine, to you, the same question.
I think the fact that I discovered Stephen has a passion for art and being an architect reflected on my childhood. Because when I was little, I never wanted to be an architect. I wanted to be an artist. And when we left Palestine on the 8th of April, 1948, I left behind some little sketches that I used to draw, like any child would draw, of the mountain, Carmel Mountain, near Haifa. When we met, I swore that once the guns...
Take your time, Antoine.
Once the guns go silent on Gaza, Stephen and my love for art and architecture will rebuild Gaza again.
I hope so too. And I would love to be involved in any kind of project like that. It has been an absurdity that there have been various plans for casino land for Gaza, sort of touted by Trump and his followers. The only people who should have a part in planning and designing for the rebuilding of Gaza should be the Palestinian people.
Agreed. Stephen, in our previous podcast episode together, you expressed what you called the moral duty that you feel speaking as a witness. Can you speak to this?
Well, I feel that very strongly, that unfortunately, certainly amongst those who support the Palestinian cause in this country, there are very few. In fact, I don't know any other actual eyewitness to the Holocaust who can still stand up or sit and talk about it. And therefore, I feel it an absolute duty, as long as I can, to talk, and however painful for others to hear, to recount some of the experiences and the dreadful events that I have seen around. I wish there were more of us, but as it is, I feel it an absolute duty not to refuse any invitation almost anywhere. Next week, I'm going to be in Liverpool and Scotland and talking to various groups. And I'd like to have more opportunity to talk to schools. I have been talking to my granddaughter Isla's school, and this is something that I like to develop as long as I can. I have been invited now 3 years ago to speak to a small socialist group on Holocaust Memorial Day, and I said yes, of course. And they put my name on their flyer as a member of the panel on Holocaust Memorial Day. And within a day, I had a letter from the local Labour Party bureaucracy, the regional group, to say that, warn me that if I go ahead and talk to this group about my Holocaust experience, I would be subject to disciplinary investigation. And I knew what that meant by then. And so I resigned by return of post. And I said in my letter, this was the beginning of my activism, actually, because it was something of an own goal, because this letter went viral. And I said it in the letter that this false anti-Semitism crisis and factional fight may serve as a short-term electoral purpose for the Labour Party, but in the long term it will be a matter of shame, and particularly a matter of shame that it was the Labour Party then who introduced into this country McCarthyism, which is what it was, and it still is when they revive it. And whereas that was within the context of the Labour Party, it is now in the context of the whole country. The same group has captured first the Labour Party and now pretty much the country. And again, there is false anti-Semitism crisis being developed. It is being used as an excuse for threatening our protest marches with closure. And I think we must resist it. And this is a direction of travel towards the right. And if you're not careful, the final destination point is fascism. So we've got to resist it at the early stages, which is right now.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Antoine, in its meaning of catastrophe, both of you are survivors. And as you mentioned, many assert that the Nakba never ended, but it is in fact an ongoing reality, rather than the way that we reflect upon the Holocaust as an appalling event of the past. Could you elaborate on this for us?
The Holocaust was the catalyst for all the laws that we live under today. It's a catalyst to protect us from future wars. It's the catalyst to say never again. For us Palestinians suffering under the incremental genocide, it is yet again, not never again. Yet, with all the laws that have been created by the big powers to protect humanity, none of this apply to the Palestinians. And the fight for this genocide is a fight for the preservation of our memory. They can destroy, but they cannot destroy our memory. We survive on that.
Thank you so much. Stephen, you've just spoken to this, but just to elaborate a little bit further, over the past years, there has been an ongoing conflation of Judaism as a faith and the actions of the State of Israel, magnified by the government and mainstream media. Over the past weeks alone, there has been an intensification in accusations of anti-Semitism against, for example, the Green Party candidates, the Green Party leader Zach Polansky, notable public figures, and further calls from Parliament to shut down solidarity and curtail Palestine solidarity marches. How is it for you as a Jewish man and a Holocaust survivor to witness what could be described as a weaponization of anti-Semitism and a defamation of the marches that you, your family, and your community of Holocaust survivors and descendants continue to attend?
Well, yes, we continue to attend And I have been attending almost every one of the big marches. And anyone who has experienced those marches will know that it is the very opposite of hate marches. It's a complete distortion of reality again. To call them hate marches, they are very happy, often family events. And as for the Jews part in it or relating to it, we have a group called Holocaust Survivors and Descendants Against the Genocide in Gaza. That is the full title. It probably should be entered in a Guinness Book of Records for the longest title for it. But it is what it is. And we stand by the side with the placards sort of hanging from our necks, clearly stating who we are and why we are there. And we are always extremely warmly welcomed. And our purpose is to completely give the lie to this claim that this is no-go areas for Jews. It's quite the opposite. I think we are very much appreciated and thanked. And there are many emotional moments when people are touched by the fact that we take the trouble to pronounce this solidarity with the Palestinian people. It is the very opposite of saying that it is no-go area for Jews. It's just, again, a complete inversion of reality. And so we are doing it every time to keep giving the lie to these accusations. Our organizer who started this, there are two people who started this group. You may have heard of Chaim Brashis, who speaks often and has written books about his Israeli experiences, which left Israel because he opposed the IDF. The title of his book is An Army Like No Other, the idea. So anyway, we declare the very opposite of what the propaganda is trying to sell about this relationship. And we're going to continue. The other organizer I ought to mention is Mark Atkind, who, together with Chaim Brashis, started this group. And one day I just saw them standing on the side, just 2 or 3 of them, and I thought, what a brilliant idea, I'm going to join. At that time, they were all descendants. Now, there are 2 survivors, including me and one other, and descendants. And it's grown to about the size of 20 now, and it keeps growing. I just want to say that this misuse of the Holocaust, of trying to justify any kind of sanction or opposition against expression of solidarity with the Palestinian is a great injustice and harm to the memory of Holocaust. And we protest against it at every possible time. I recall one other examples of this when watching a session of the United Nations Security Council, and when the Israeli ambassador's turn came, he very theatrically put a yellow star on himself, and that was such an obvious reference and justification to the ongoing genocide. And it disgusted me because I had to wear a yellow star, and I know what that meant. It was complete humiliation, although as a child I didn't realize that. I realized it in retrospect. But that's what they are doing.
Thank you. We're going off piste here. I haven't put this in the questions, but I'm just going to throw it anyway. You mentioned the word humiliation there, and it's in the trailer that you showed us that what is happening at this time is not just a humiliation to the Palestinians, it's a humiliation to the whole world. And just from what you were saying, could you just elaborate on that?
Well, the humiliation consists of having to see the victimization, the destruction, the torture, the starving of a people, and yet we cannot do anything which is proportionate to that to help them and defend them. And that position is absolutely painful, which I think a vast number of people are experiencing. And it's a complete negation of international standards and laws, and it just cannot continue. I think maybe the only proportionate gesture, if it were possible, could be a general strike, down tool of everybody and out to the streets to say, no, we can't tolerate this. And although we march and so on in periodic times, it doesn't seem quite proportional yet to what is being perpetrated.
Absolutely. I don't know if there was anything that you wanted to add in there, Antoine.
This genocide cannot continue, and differentiating between one sort of people and another, those deserve to die and those don't deserve to die. Palestinians are nothing. It's international law does not even touch upon that. We are supposed to be all human. We are supposed to be preserved on this planet. together. We are supposed to learn from the tragedies of the past. And yet, when it comes to the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, we stop and we start dividing the line between who deserves to die, the babies of Gaza, who are they? They are complicit according to the Zionist regime, and the others are worth living. At one point, this must be exposed completely beyond international law, because international law has been silent. The laws that have been created are incredible. They should be the constitutions of every country before the constitution of the country itself. And if they are applied, then we may be in a better place. If they are applied equally to all of us, but we will talk about the next part where we have a one state where everybody would live together. So I wait to make a comment on that.
Would you like to make a comment now? Please keep going.
Yes, for 78 years, Antoine and his family and every Palestinian in Palestine was talking about one state where everybody would live together. This is why we rejected Resolution 181. You cannot divide a baby into two and give one to a stranger and the other to his mother. We rejected it not because we didn't want Jews or Zionists at that time. We rejected it because it is a land for everybody. Jews lived there for decades, if not for centuries. There were Arab Jews. Jews were there. They were the Semite people of the Middle East. They are the real Semites, and that's the other conflation of anti-Semitism. They ran out of options, the Zionists, so they tried to throw that at you. They call me anti-Semite. Look at my DNA. I'm a Semite more than any Israeli ever. So to really preserve that country as one state is the only option left for us. Why? Because every other option has been explored. Every other, you name any option from anybody, from Arab leaders, from Western leaders, from George Bush, Tony Blair, any other option hasn't worked. And the last nightmare was the Oslo Accord. It is dead in its pan now. Because of that, the option left is the one state. And why? Because Netanyahu is saying it. All the Zionists today are calling for a one state, but only for Jews. Antoine Raffoul and all his Palestinians, including this man here, is calling for one state for everybody. For everybody. And the millions around the globe who supported Gaza are calling for one state from the river to the sea. The Zionists are calling for one state, not even from the river. They're going even beyond the river. I have a plan that was introduced in the Paris Peace Accord 1919 that showed greater Israel spanning all the way to Iraq. And they wanted a confirmation of that one state. I said, don't go that far. I'm happy with the historic Palestine state under the mandate. There were Jews, there were Chinese, there were Shiites, there were everybody in it. And that one state is the instigator for me for Gaza, for rebuilding Gaza. We will talk about that if you wish.
We will. Stephen, is there anything that you wanted to add to that?
Yes, I completely agree about the one-state solution being the only possible solution, a democratic state where those Jews who can accept maybe a minority position within a state can stay, and those who cannot accept that maybe go back to New York or wherever. And I just want to add some kind of hopeful, positive note about the future that I feel. With all this suffering, there is a silver lining in that there is no recovery from perpetrating a genocide. And I think that the position of Zionism and maybe, well, the Israeli state as it is now is terminal, and it is just a question of time. So I think I am quite confident that there will be a free Palestinian state, maybe in our lifetime. But I am sure that victory will be there. And it's just a question of time. It is impossible to recover from perpetrating a genocide. There's no way back. And personally, as a policy, I do not anymore debate with Zionists at all.
Bravo.
There was only one occasion when we had a negative comment when we were standing on the side as the Holocaust survivors and descendants group. And somebody came up and said, shame on you, shame on you. And I said, well, are you a Zionist by any chance? And he said, yes, of course I am. And I said, and you support a genocide? And he said, what genocide? So I said, well, this discussion is terminated. So, there's no point. If anybody who, having been able to see what you can see, if you just not turn the other way, can still maintain and support Zionism, there's no debate necessary.
Stephen, you hinted on something I was going to mention later, but I'm going to mention it now. In our lifetime, you say. We're still young. Come on, don't give me this. Because in my dream, as an architect, in my dream, I had promised my granddaughter two things. One, that I will be there at her graduation into university. The second, that I will take her by the hand back to Haifa in a free Palestine. I'm 100% sure it will happen.
I'll meet you there.
No, you're coming with us.
We're all coming. You're just getting started, Stephen.
Yes.
We've joked before about your dad becoming a celebrity in his late 80s.
Yes.
So you've got a lot more in the tank.
Yeah.
It happened by accident entirely because of that letter by the Labour Party.
The Labour Party created it. Antoine, I would actually just love for you to elaborate a little bit on what you were speaking to there, on how to speak to Zionists at this time. It's a conversation that we have endlessly in our friendship group with Yasmin, with many of the girls here. We've become quite incensed by some of the things that are said to us, and Yasmin is always sending messages and voice notes from you with your wisdom of stay calm. And Stephen has said that he doesn't speak to Zionists at all. No. If there is anything that you wanted to add to what Stephen said, that would be very helpful, I think, for many people here.
Well, records show that pre-October, Israel spent $7 million a year on propaganda, on the Hasbara. Now it's 700, recently approved by their parliament, $730 million. Now they've lost all options. They're trying to really manipulate in every way. One of those ways is to throw something at you, get you busy answering that, diverts you from the real issues, waste your energy. And that's based on about 10 years ago, a subcommittee of a subcommittee of a subcommittee from the Zionists met secretly, and it was recorded, and I have the video, where the chairman of that subcommittee of the subcommittee, it's a propaganda committee, telling all the young people in the audience, they're all Zionists, the army of Hasbara, the first thing you need to do, and I have it on record, it's secretly filmed, and I have the actual records of the thing. The first thing you need to do is keep asking silly questions to the Palestinians so that you can busy them, divert them from the real issues, and they will be so angry and so tired that they will forget their cause. So I agree with Stephen. I've had enough. I've tried to assimilate. I've tried to join in a discussion. I've been so many lectures with Ilan, with Finkelstein, and you always get this one guy standing up in the audience to throw something at you. Doesn't mean anything, but to throw something, I have the right to ask. And then you busy Ilan Pape, you busy Finkelstein responding to that silly question. Because if you don't, you're anti-Semite. That story is finished now for me. I'm not ready to talk to any Zionist about anything.
Completely agree, as I said. What you mentioned about these diversionary tactics in the Labour Party, there was something similar called the dead cat on the table. To completely divert a discussion, somebody produces a dead cat, and then you talk about the cat rather than any subject.
Yeah, please don't don't engage. Really don't. And even if they accuse you, don't engage. We've been there before. We've been there. Gaza needs us now to engage with its people, with its revival, with its cause, with justice there. We don't want to talk about Semitism, anti-Semitism. That's an old story. I've lived through it in England. For Christ's sake, it's worn out argument. Finished. Don't talk to me, especially don't talk to me, I'm a Semite. Don't talk to me, don't accuse me of anything. Even if I'm not a Semite, the argument is absolutely flat now. It has been proven and disproven, and you can talk to Ilan Pape from here to heaven, and he will tell you the same thing. He should know, for Christ's sake.
Thank you so much for sharing those very wise words. I think it's something that I need to increasingly take on board myself. So thank you. Something that I also like to remind myself of, and something that I see often, is that if you are here engaged in Palestine solidarity, then all the millions of dollars of propaganda didn't work on you, which is always nice to remind ourselves. So just moving on to architecture, because it's an incredible thing that both of you ventured down similar paths to become architects following your experiences of catastrophe as children. And Stephen, in our podcast conversation, in regards to the destruction of infrastructure in Gaza over the past years, you said, as someone who has spent their life constructing, to see so much destruction so casually is another level of personal pain. What is the greater evil? What has been enacted upon people, or making Gaza totally unlivable? Can you speak to your experience watching the decimation of Gaza through the lens of an architect?
Well, I know about the difficulty of, in the first place, building anything in Gaza because of all the restrictions. It's an open-air concentration camp even before October the 7th, and to actually produce any building and environment against the severe restrictions of importing materials, etc., is a much greater problem and achievement. And therefore, these within a moment, destructions of whole multi-story buildings that we have seen with the 2,000-pound bombs is particularly painful. And it is disregarding creations of lifetimes. And sometimes families maybe had to sacrifice to produce a home in that environment over decades. And then it's destroyed in an instant. And for somebody who spent much of my life actually constructing, this kind of completely pointless and evil destruction is very painful to watch. And I think it is painful to watch for anybody, frankly. And I think one of the shocks that Gazan people particularly experience is if they're lucky enough to have a shelter, which not many of them have, and after one of the raids come out from the shelter, they can see in a glance their home has gone. There's nothing in its place. And what an experience that can be. Now, this echoes my own experience of post-war, revisiting our own flat in Budapest. Because during the fighting, unfortunately, we were on the Buddha Hills in our various homes in hiding, where it so happens that the final fighting occurred and the front line moves through us, which was partly why we had to relocate several times into uncertain locations, just like the Gazan people have to go to locations that are declared safe and actually turn out not to be safe at all. But when it was over and finally we could cross the Danube, because we had to wait for the Russians to construct a pontoon bridge, and then we crossed back to look at what happened to our flat on the Pest side. And I went with my mother. My father was still somewhere in Theresienstadt on the way back, maybe. At a glance, we could see that we became homeless because as we reached the building, which is a reinforced concrete structure, all the external walls were blown in by an explosion nearby. And you could look into our building like it was a doll's house with furniture still in place at various levels. And suddenly, at a glance, we realized that we became homeless. So how many Gazan families have that experience is absolutely terrible, I think. But it's something that difficult to record or realize because it's not, as an experience, is not a photogenic one. You know, it's internal, what I like to say. And I hope that, as Anton said, at one point, really positive reconstruction will begin. And it's amazing how quickly a town can recover, because Budapest, which in parts, not consistently, but in parts look just like Gaza, certainly the area around us in the Buddha Hills. Yet within a few years, it recovered quite well. So once people are liberated, the energy is also liberated. It's amazing what it can produce.
Antoine, we're going to follow up with speaking about your vision of rebuilding Gaza.
Can I stand up for that?
Yes, please, by all means.
I cannot talk too much about it because I am asked to present it in Slovenia in 3 days' time, but I can hint about it. It's based on the one-state solution, because without the one state, we go back to a strip, and that's Trump's plan, which will not happen anyway. So it has been said that destruction is one form of death. To be forgotten is another, and the Palestinians refuse this second death. Therefore, my Gaza plan revolves about reviving Palestinian memory, Palestinian history, Palestinian existence, not out of the blue, but from sites that sat on the Via Maris road or track, which started in North Africa through Gaza, through Palestine, Jerusalem, Haifa, Damascus, Istanbul, and all the way to East Asia. And Gaza was always in the middle of it. Israel wants to erase that concept. Israel wants to erase that pearl called Gaza in a string of pearls along the Mediterranean, along the Via Maris, all the way to China. My view is to bring Gaza as it was before, a jewel on the Via Maris, recognizing not what Antoine is recognizing the sites that UNESCO has recognized. They are 3,000 or 4,000 years old. Bringing them back, I promise you, is very easy. Destroying them and destroying their memory is never easy. You cannot do that. We will rebuild them. We will rebuild the communities of Gaza. Gaza was the largest district in Palestine, in the southern bit of Palestine. It's one of 5, and this 5th, called Gaza district, is equal to all the others. And it fed most of Palestine from cereals, from corn, from all the vegetables, even England. You know, I read somewhere that England ships, they came about 30 a day to pick up the base for the beer. They pick them up and they go because it produced all the bloody thing for the British, for Christ's sake. I mean, where is that in the Trump plan? Where is that? It's very easy to pay Dubai to copy Dubai and plant it onto Gaza. Now, many people in drawing up that plan had asked me, how do you pay for it? And I said, only last year it was discovered that Gaza, I don't know how many billions of cubic meters of gas off its shore. And you've heard about Egypt and Israel reaching an agreement about that one, stealing them from one side to the other. It is sitting there to be invested in. It will cost less than what it cost Israel to bomb the hell out of Gaza for 3 years. They have thrown 80,000 tons on Gaza, equivalent to 1 ton for every martyr in Gaza. Imagine. And it cost that much more than rebuilding Gaza. So my vision is to connect Gaza to its mother, Palestine. And the details will come out hopefully next week, and I will publish them for you so you can see them on my website. Thank you very much. Hey, and you will be the chief architect for that one.
Sounds like you don't have a choice, Stephen.
I still have a drawing board and T-square.
I elect them. They're in charge. Okay, I think that leads us beautifully to hope, Antoine. Thank you so much for sharing that vision. So powerful. And, obviously hope was a big theme of tonight. And thank goodness, because I feel like we all need it to be continually topped up in these times through which we are living, where things can feel so intense, where things can feel never ending. Stephen, I would love to come to you first. Of what, in the wisdom of your years and your experiences, would you like to impart on us here tonight about hope?
Well, when I sort of look back on my life, it is amazing how many very major changes I have been through, even just in my lifetime. And sometimes situations appear totally immovable, and then they crumble and something completely different replaces it. And I think, therefore, the hope is that there are such enormous changes just around the corner, while it is looking impossibly fixed. I was born at a time when in Hungary there was a right-wing authoritarian semi-fascist state. And then came a Holocaust, big change, and a war, the Second World War. And after that, there was liberation and came a period of, well, it turns out to be illusionary democracy of about 3 years. And that didn't last. And there came a communist takeover, a complete regime change, which was, to begin with, quite keenly supported. And that quite rapidly deteriorated into Stalinism and its horrors. And that looked immovable. And then came a revolution, an uprising against it. And that was put down. And then I relocated completely into Western democracy, to this country. And during that time, shortly afterwards, the Soviet Union collapsed when nobody expected it. So when things look immovable, they are not. And I think that the next big changes are going to be positive. There is obviously a crisis of capitalism and imperialism. And we're not quite sure what is around the corner, but in the meantime, there are enormous changes of technology, which could change things a great deal. Inventions, AI, that can bring further major changes. And so the apparently kind of unlistening, hopeless regime that we are under is not as firm and as solid as it appears. That there is always a change around the corner. That is my message, really, to people. Don't despair. Things don't last, and sometimes they improve. Thank you.
Thank God. Antoine,
wonderful.
Same to you.
I agree totally with you. And the hope that my friend Ilan always gives me is that, Antoine, it's going to implode. Zionism will implode. I add one thing. When I came to England from America after my studies and working in New York, I came to the Balfour land to actually expose it and to be activist on it. And it was such a slow thing. It was so polite, and all this stuff. And then in the last 4 years, 5 years, architecture became part of my activism. And thank God it worked for Lifta. It worked for other sites in Palestine we worked on, Jaffa and Nablus. But what really, really surprised me, I shouldn't be surprised because I had a cause, but nobody was listening, is Gaza genocide opened up the ocean of all those millions of young people around the globe. I have never seen so many people, Chinese, Indians, Somalis, everybody going onto the streets. I have demonstrated against Iraq in 2003. There were a lot, but we froze to death and we went home after that. And Iraq went on. Now I'm not alone. There are millions of young people like my daughter and her gang, I call, who will on their own, they don't need a teacher. They go and investigate. They go and explore the internet. Thank God. I don't like the internet very much, but for this, it is incredible. You don't have to go to the British Library anymore or the British Museum because they're trying to erase the name of Palestine. So you go on the internet and explore and find out. You don't need Antoine, you don't need Stephen. It reminds you, but it doesn't inform you. And you have to do your work for us, because if you do it correctly, you are invited to Palestine.
Gang of wild beasts, I think he's coined us before. Thank you so much to both of you. Is there anything else that you would like to add to the conversation?
Run out of thoughts, actually. I just want to say that thank you very much for inviting us, really, and giving this opportunity to talk about the past. And let's hope that some of that will become a warning about the direction of travel for today. And if that does work that way, then I'm very pleased. Thank you.
When I was building my website, I was putting supporters, like a blog of supporters. And one of them was a professor in America. And I asked her questions. How do empires collapse? And she said, they start very little, but when they collapse in one day. And Zionism will be the same, I promise you. And I see it in front of my eyes. Thank God I will live another years to see it implode and to fulfill my wish with my granddaughter and with this guy. I'm not forgetting him.
Thank you, Antoine, and I agree completely.
Thank you so much. It is an absolute miracle that we have finished on time, 4 minutes early. Unbelievable. So I think we're going to go to some questions now from the audience.
Thank you so much. I totally lost the plot emotionally at your film, and then listening to you speak is so inspirational for me. It's hopeful for me. I suppose my question is, listening to your lived experiences, and you were speaking about your homes, going back to your homes or your villages and then being gone and all your memories being gone. We can talk about hope and empire imploding, but I was curious about you two personally. How do you channel your steadfastness, like day to day? What is it for you that keeps you going towards that? Thank you.
For myself, I just need to repeat what I really said earlier, that I am aware that there are very few witnesses of the Holocaust experience remaining, and therefore I feel it an absolute duty to keep talking about it while I can. I think it is something particularly valuable for people to hear actual lived experience as opposed to reading about it, say, and I know that I can, in a limited way, supply that. I am concerned at times that I repeat it too much because, as I keep saying, I only had one Holocaust experience and I can't really vary it. But it's interesting. It's a bit like when you read bedtime stories to children, people want to hear the same thing again. Tell us about what you read last time. And so far, I don't have too much of an uprising against me speaking again and repeatedly.
Very subtle question, a very difficult one as well. But I recall Anne-Marie Jassir, the director of Palestine 36. I think she said something like, Palestine may be not free, it's occupied, but its people are free. And what gives me hope is that after 78 years, they're struggling. They haven't been forgotten. That gives me hope. In addition to what I said about the young people today, they really have raised my temperature, and I can sit down and relax actually now. I can really retire and do architecture and let them do the fight for me.
Thank you. It was a brilliant question. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say what a privilege it is to hear you both today, to have met you on the marches. It's very, very inspirational. I just wanted to sort of follow up really on what you were saying about hope. And I live in Hackney, and for many months, roughly once a week, a group of us have stood by the side of roads. I don't know if anyone has seen it, with placards talking about the genocide, getting people to think if every school in Hackney was bombed, children in Hackney annihilated, and asking people to use their vote wisely. And I think you probably all know that actually Hackney has gone green. And I don't think it was just due to us, but I just wanted to really say that, something small like that can really sort of make an impact, and what you're doing just makes such an impact. But my question is really about how to really change this discussion, the weaponization of anti-Semitism. And I suppose to sort of get us all to think about how we can each do that in our own communities and everybody who we talk to.
Yes. About 10, 15 years ago, it was a big subject, and then it subsided. Now it's coming back. Why? Because Zionism lost the plot. They tried to conflate Judaism with Zionism. Now we are going to hit them with anti-Semitism. The problem is they're not talking to Semites. They're talking to anybody. They can call Starmer anti-Semite if he opens his mouth. They can call me anti-Semite, as I said before. So it's a last resort before they collapse. So I'm not really bothered. And anybody, any station, any TV channel that brings that subject up, meaning it's desperate. They're really desperate. So I wouldn't give them a second of my time to answer it. Let them fight between each other. Let's talk about Ben Gvir having his cake and eating it. That's what we need to talk about, what happens in Parliament. They're so desperate, it's unbelievable. So the subject of Semitism and anti-Semitism fades into nothing compared to those policymakers. But $730 million are being spent. It has to be spent on something to divert him, to divert me, to divert you from the real issues. It's not going to work now. Finished. End of story.
I think that the false and completely artificial anti-Semitism crisis is based on the conflation of anti-Semitism with criticism of Israel. And at the bottom of this, what this relies on and what the foundation is a false definition of anti-Semitism, the IHRA definition. And it was one of the fundamental defeats, I think, of the left, and certainly of Corbyn and his followers, was in accepting the IHRA definition. It is still being used actively, although it is in many ways discredited. And I think one of the ways we can push back, first of all, we must never apologize for being accused of anti-Semitism, but push back against it as nonsense and have an organized fight against the definition and the use of it. And it is something that is being discussed about how to go about it, both at national and international level. Zoran Mamdani, when he became mayor of New York, banned the definition on his first day, and he's still alive. It can be done.
Thank you. We have time for one more question.
Hi, my name's Lindsay. I'm with the International Jewish Anti-Zionist Network, and I just want to thank Stephen so much because he's been a real steward on our picket. We've been outside the Israeli embassy for the past 2 years, and every time Stephen comes, we always get a massive crowd to hear from his wisdom. And as he always quotes, we always quote Mayrak Edelman, to be a Jew means to stand with the oppressed, never the oppressor, which I really love when Stephen quotes it. I think you've talked about this at our picket before, but I'd be really interested to hear your perspective. And maybe if this has happened to you before, have you ever been ostracized from speaking at like big NGOs like the Holocaust Memorial Trust because of your stance of standing against the IHRA and standing in solidarity with Palestine?
Only by the Labour Party. No, not since then. I have been speaking quite frequently, but I haven't yet had a cancellation that many of my friends, like say Haim Rashid, has suffered from. And I haven't been arrested yet, which is a terrible shame, but it was only an interview and at mutually convenient times, as the letter said. It was extremely boring. It was an hour and a half, and I had legal representation with me, and I was told in no uncertain terms that I must not say anything else but no comment. He said, you will be tempted to say sometimes yes or no, but that would be a big mistake because it would create a hybrid interview, and we don't want that. So just always say no comment. So at one point during the interview, they projected the first line of the so-called the delegation on the fatal day of 18th of January 25, when the police turned so unhelpful. And there I was standing between Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell, and they said, is that you? And I said, no comment. I was really moved by the demonstration outside in solidarity and sympathy. It was fantastic, Even, quite high-profile people were there, like Chris Nineham and so on. And the way people waited all that long time and still there when I came out, this is when I was nearest to tears, actually. And I did say then that the experience was like being part of a really warm family, those of the pro-Palestinian activists. And this comment was picked up by Francesca Albanese at one point, and I was so pleased about that because she's my absolute hero. So anyway, that's how it was.
Thank you. And thank you all so much for your questions and your insights. They really added to the conversation. Just to come back to the Galilee Foundation, and thank you so much for having us here this evening. An important component of the work of the Galilee Foundation is the promotion of educational and cultural initiatives for Palestinians in Israel, and more recently in the occupied Palestinian territories, aiming to improve the lives of young Palestinians. The Foundation has also named a war on education. Every one of the 12 universities and 90% of the schools in Gaza have been completely obliterated, leading to hundreds of thousands of young Palestinian students being without essential education. In a time where we see this war on education and the efforts here to control the narrative, we also exist in an age of information, where we must continue to educate ourselves as a form of resistance and liberation. Events such as this, gathering together, sharing stories, and listening to eyewitness accounts is part of that re-education process. So we must continue to gather. So a huge thank you to the work of the Galilee Foundation. A huge thank you to the ongoing project of survivors. Thank you for bringing Stephen and Antoine's stories to life. And of course, a huge thank you to the remarkable survivors themselves. Thank you for sharing your stories of survival and hope with us. So can we have a huge round of applause for Antoine and Stephen? Thank you. Thank you for listening. It's great to have you with me on this journey towards higher love for all. Our time is our greatest commodity and gift, so thanks for investing it in yourself and sharing it with me. Please do take a moment to rate and review the show, all of which enables more people to find me and for me to connect with more great guests each week for both yours and my enjoyment. All links, references and contact information is detailed too within the show notes. And I always love to hear your feedback, so feel free to hit me up on my Instagram at higherlove_with Megan or via my website higher-love.com. Send your takeaways, and if you enjoyed this episode, please share or send on to someone else who would benefit. Until next time, big love.